Welcome to the Data Analysis Software Training. I am Elijah Pia, and in this video, I will show you the easiest way to work with the STATA software. Let us look at a brief overview of STATA.
STATA is a general-purpose statistical software package created in 1985 by STATA Corp. Most of its users work in research, especially in the fields of economics, sociology, political science, biomedicine, and epidemiology. STATA's capabilities include data management, statistical analysis, graphics, simulations, regression, and custom programming. The name STATA is a syllabic abbreviation of the words statistics and data. And so when you go to the frequently asked questions or the official forum of STATA, they insist that the correct English pronunciation of STATA must remain a mystery. And so whether anyone pronounces it as STATA or STATA, these are considered acceptable. When you launch the STATA program, you will see 5 windows on the screen. Down here is the command window, and this is where we specify the set of instructions that we want STATA to perform. And so, for instance, you may want to use the command display to actually display a text string, say, data tutorials are great. Now, because this is a text string, you have to wrap it in double quotes. Press enter on your keyboard to execute this command. When the command is executed, you notice that the command finds its way into this particular window with the result beneath it. Now, this window is called the results window. On the left-hand side, something happened after we executed this command. The command finds its way into this particular window. And so, this window is called the review window, which keeps a tracking history of all the commands that you execute in STATA. On the right-hand side is the variables window. Whenever you call in a data set, the names of the variables as well as its labels are displayed in this particular window. And when you click on any particular variable, the properties of that variable will also be displayed down here. And so we call this particular window the properties window. Let us illustrate how these two windows behave when it comes to STATA. And so we would like to call in a data set. Now, whenever you install the STATA program, STATA comes with example data sets that you can use in this particular software. And so we would like to call in a data set called auto. And because it is in the STATA format, it is auto.dta. And so we use the command system use auto.dta, which I'll discuss this later in details. Now press enter to call in this data, which is a 1978 automobile data. And what we are interested in here is the variables. And you can see that the names of the variables as well as their labels are displayed in the variables window. Now, when you click on any of the variables, the properties of that variable will be displayed in this window. So we would like to click on, say, price. And then you realize that there are certain information about this variable which are displayed in the properties window. Now, you cannot edit anything in this properties window due to this padlock. You simply have to click on it to unlock, and then you can change the variable name, the label, or even the type. In this case, the int represents integer. We also have a string, a float, byte, and other types of data. And so we are not interested in that one for now. We only wish to look at the windows which are available in STATA whenever the program is launched. For most software we are familiar with, there are spreadsheets available where we have to enter data for analysis. Notable among them is the Microsoft Excel. There is a spreadsheet which is readily available whenever that program is launched. The same applies to the statistical package for the social sciences. In STATA, the spreadsheet is hidden within the interior of the program, and so we'll have to invoke it or call the spreadsheet out by going to the toolbar icons and clicking on these two spreadsheet-like icons. One of the spreadsheet has a pencil on top and the other has something like a microscope. Now, when you hover your mouse on this icon, you see a data editor edit mode. And then when you hover your mouse on this icon too, you see the data editor browse. These two icons actually call in the data editors. And so when you click on this data editor in the edit mode, you realize that the data which we called in, which is the auto.dta data set, can be edited or changed. For instance, the value here is 20. And so if I want to change it to 30, I simply have to select the cell and type 30 in there to make the change. I already know that there was a 20 in there, so I just revert it back to the 20. And so this is what happens. Whenever you use the data editor in the edit mode, this allows you to make changes to your data set. I would like to close it now and go back to click on this particular icon, which is the data editor, the browse option. Now, when I click on that, you can see the data, but you cannot make changes to the data. You cannot type anything which STATA will accept into this particular data editor. So the data editor, the browse option, allows you to only view the data so that you do not make changes to it, whether accidentally or deliberately. If you want to make changes to a data set, you simply have to use the edit mode. Now we can close this data editor, and STATA provides two commands with which we can invoke the data editors. STATA provides the browse command. Simply type the browse into the command window, press enter to invoke the data editor in the browse option. You can close it again, go back to the command window and type the command edit, and this will also invoke the data editor in the edit mode where you can make changes to your data if you want to. To create variables and variable labels, we are going to make use of the variables and the properties windows. Now we'll have to call in our spreadsheet first. And so in the command window, we simply type edit. This will call forth the data editor, the edit mode. And so we can enter any data in here. In the first cell, simply type any value. In this case, I would type 1. When that happens, data automatically generates a variable named variable 1. And so this variable is displayed in the variables window. Click on the variable in here, and the properties of that variable is displayed in the properties window. We would like to change the name of the variable from variable 1 to, let's say, gender. Then quickly press enter on your keyboard, and that is effected in the variable with the name gender. You may want to create another variable, let's say years of education. And so in this cell, you want to type just any value. So let me type 2. And another variable is generated as variable 2. Now, you can either make changes to this variable in the properties window within the data editor or simply close it. The variable 2 appears here. Click on it. Go to the properties window, click on the padlock to unlock the properties. Now in the name box, simply clean out the variable 2 and type your variable name. We would want to call that variable name EDUC, which is the short for years of education. Press enter and this is effected. Now, whenever you specify a variable name, anybody who views your data must be able to make a meaning out of it. If the name of the variable does not make such meaning, we simply have to create a label for it. For instance, EDUC, which is a short definitely for education, might even stand for education level or years of education. And so to be specific, we might want to create a label for it to inform anybody who views our data set that the EDUC actually represents years of education. So in the labels box, let's type years of education. Press enter and this change is also effected. One thing about the STATA program is that whenever you are making use of some of these options with the clicks and the menu options and everything that we have on the window interface, as long as those changes are being effected, STATA correspondingly displays the commands which warranted set actions that we performed in STATA. And this is how you can work with these commands. And so for instance, when we specified the labeling to this variable name, it simply used the code label variable, and the variable name comes here as EDUC, and then wrapped in code because there's a test string, years of education, and then this also yielded the same result. If I want to change the fact that the label of EDUC should be level of education, then I can simply type into the command window label variable EDUC as my variable name, and then wrapping it in code, I can just simply call it level of education. Close the code, press enter, and this is effected. And so when you go to the variables window, it is no longer years of education, but level of education. And in the properties window, you can see that the level of education has also been effected. And so this is how you work with commands in the STATA program. So as long as you begin to use all the menu options and the options that are available in the STATA window interface, STATA continuously gives you the command which yielded such results after execution of that command. So with time, you become familiar with the commands and then you can type directly into the command window to do further analysis. And so at this point, we can simply go back to our spreadsheet by typing the edit, press enter to execute it, and you can go ahead and enter your values in here, your data in the spreadsheet. And so maybe in the second cell, you can type the value 2. For instance, you may want to code gender with 1 as male and 2 as female. We are going to learn how to code values in STATA. And so you can go ahead and enter your data in here. To create value labels for your variable, we can simply make use of the value label in the properties window. And so for instance, if I click on gender, where I would like to code 1 for male and 2 for female, I can simply click on gender to activate the properties window, go to the value label, and then click in this box here. Now when that happens, you can click on this arrow and you realize that it says none, meaning there is no value label in there. So simply click on the box with the 3 dots in there, click on it, and then it opens the manage value labels. Then you can click on create label, and then it asks you to enter a label name. In this case, we'll simply type gender. And so when you come into this box, it asks you to enter the value of the label. And so when I type 1, I go into the label and type male because I want to code 1 as male. Simply click on add to add it into this particular box. Now in the value, type 2, and in the label, type female. Click on add again, after which you have to click on OK. Now, when this happens, you can click on this plus button, which lies on the left of the label name, and you realize that it brings a tree illustration, which tells you that inside of gender, there is 1 which represents male and 2 which represents female. When this is done, you can simply click on close. Now, you will have to go to the properties window, click on the arrow in the value label, and then you will see the gender in there because that is what we just labeled. Click on the gender to insert that. And now you can call forth your data editor. So we use the browse mode so that we don't make any changes in there. Simply press enter, and then you realize that the values which we entered have actually changed into their corresponding labels that we gave them. Now, we would like to use the edit mode, and from here we can just simply click on the edit mode. And so it asks us, we are about to change from browse mode to edit mode. Are you sure that you want to change to edit mode? Yes, of course. We want to do that. And so now in the education level, we may simply want to type a number of them. So 1, maybe 3, 1, 2, 1, and 3. Now what we are going to do is that we are simply going to code these values with 1 for basic education, 2 for secondary education, and 3 for tertiary education. This time around, we are not going to make use of the properties window. So we simply have to close this data editor. And we are not going to make use of this properties window in the window interface either. We simply have to click on this toolbar icon. When you hover your mouse on it, it tells you this is the variables manager. Click on it and the variables manager dialog box appears. Now this is not the only way you can bring out the variables manager. So close this one. You can also go to the menu bar, click on data, go down there to variables manager to select it, and the variables manager dialog box still appears. So you can call for the variables manager using this toolbar icon or go to data and click on variables manager. Now when that happens, you simply have to click on this one to select the education. Now go to the value label and you realize that this is similar to the information that is displayed in the variables window. So you simply have to go to the value label, and then currently if you click on the arrow, there is nothing in there except gender, which we have already coded. So we simply have to go and click manage, and then the manage value labels dialog box appears. Click on create label, and now we can enter a label name. And so for instance, we can simply enter the label name education. Now go to the value and type 1. Go to the label, and 1 represents what? Basic education. Or we can just simply type basic because we know what it actually stands for. Click on add to add it into the box. Now 2 for secondary. Click on add. 3 for tertiary. Click on add. After that, you can click on OK, and the education value labels are created. And so if you click on this plus button, it collapses the education labeling as 1 for basic, 2 for secondary, 3 for tertiary. Now simply click on close. And then you can click on the arrow which is beside the text box for the value label to select that which we currently coded, and that is education. When you do that, you can simply click on apply to effect the change. Now close the variables manager dialog box, and then we can call in the data editor using the browse option to view our data and realize that all our data is coded in here. Apart from entering commands into the command window and executing them directly, you can make use of another feature that STATA provides, which is called the do file editor, which can be accessed from the toolbar icons and clicking on this particular icon. When you hover your mouse on it, you see the new do file editor. Click on it and the do file editor appears. And because this is not saved, it is untitled. Now, in here, you can specify one command or more STATA commands, and STATA provides a convenient way to perform a series of the commands. So in the do file, for instance, let me close it right now and illustrate this one in the command window. Now in here, we may want to call in the auto.dta data. We have illustrated that one in our previous lessons by simply typing the system use and the auto.dta. Now I would want to clean this and simply open the do file editor and in there type system use and auto.dta. Now when this happens, let me resize it. When this happens, you can simply execute this particular command by highlighting it and clicking on this particular button which says execute selection do. So when you click on this one, the command is run in the STATA program, and as you can see, this is what happens, and the data set has been invited into STATA with the variable names displayed here. And then you can specify a number of commands. So for instance, we may want to effect a summarize option and perhaps maybe a code book, and maybe we want to summarize a specific variable, say price, and we may also want to summarize a variable mpg. Now you can do so by simply highlighting the summarize, go to the execute selection, do, and then the summarize is done and displayed in the results window. You can even select many of the commands and then simply run the commands using the execute selection do. So when you click on this one, all the commands are run and the results displayed in the results window. And so this is how you can use the do file to run series of commands. Now one thing is that whilst you have done this, you can also save this to your computer so that anybody who accesses this particular do file will also look at the steps with which you made your analysis, and that person can also use that when he or she also has the STATA program. And so this is called the do file editor. There are example data sets that come with STATA whenever the program is installed. You can access those example data sets. They are used for practice. And so you go to the file menu, click on it, and in the drop down menu, simply click on example data set. Now, this window appears, which asks you to click on this blue link, which is example data sets installed with STATA, because when you hover your mouse on it, it turns into that hand ready to be clicked. So when you click on it, then it tells you all the data sets that are installed with STATA. So you can click on use to use the data directly, or you can even close it and we can use the system use with the data, and we can use that one also. So this is the list of the data sets that are installed with STATA. And so for instance, if I want to use this census.dta, I simply have to click on use here and the data is invited, after which you can close this window and you realize that the variables contained in the data set census have been displayed in the variables window. I can simply type in the command into the command window clear to clear that from memory. And what I can do is to display the list of the example data set without having to go through the file and example data sets thing. We simply have to type system use directory. So something like the system use and dir, short for directory, and press enter on your keyboard, and it gives you the list of all the data sets that are installed with STATA. And so if you want to call in any of these data, you simply have to type system use and then you type the same name that has been given to each of the data. And so if you want to use the nlsw88.dta, you simply have to type nlsw88.dta, press enter, and this data has been called into STATA. You can also use the clear option to clear it from memory. Let us look at how to perform basic information statistics on the data sets that we've called into STATA. So we simply want to use the auto.dta dataset. And like I said before, you simply have to type the system use dir, press enter, and you see a list of the data sets that are installed with STATA. And then we can use any one of them. So for instance, we might type system use and use the auto.dta dataset. So auto.dta dataset. So press enter, and then the dataset has been called into STATA. Now, to perform basic information statistics, we simply have to go to the menu bar. Then what you have to do is to click on data, and the drop down menu appears, and you have to select describe data, which will also give you further a menu which asks you to select all these things, and these are the basic information statistics that you can perform in data. So when you click on this particular option, it will give you a dialog box which asks you to describe the data in memory. And so it tells you that you are supposed to leave empty for all the variables. And so right now, let us do that and see what happens. Now, there are two options here in the dialog box. When you click on OK, it closes the dialog box whilst executing the command and giving you the result in the results window. Or you can simply click on submit, upon which this dialog box is not closed, but the result is actually displayed in the results window. So let us illustrate this one. So I simply have to click OK because it tells me to leave empty for all variables, and it will actually describe that particular data. So when I click on OK, we see that it gives me the command describe. So instead of going through the data and describing the data and getting this particular result, we can simply type into the command window the describe, and then it will give us this particular result. Now, I could have gone in there, describe data, click on describe data in memory, and select a number of variables. So you click on this arrow to bring out the drop-down list of the variables and select which variables you want to describe. I can click on price and it is added in the box. I can click on rep 78 and it is there. Maybe weight and length. So these four variables. And then when I am done, I simply have to click on submit. In that case, the dialog box does not close, but the result is actually displayed in the results window. So as you can see, it specifies the command. It says describe the variables price, rep 78, weight, and length, just as we selected in the variables box. Now, at a point in time, you can also choose several of these options or any one of them. For instance, we only want to display only variable names with the described data. When we do that and click on submit, you see that the variable names are actually displayed with nothing added. So when I deselect it and click on display only general information and click submit, it gives you this particular result also. So I have to click on cancel, and then we go to the next basic information statistic, which is actually the data. Go to describe data, and now we go to describe data content, and this is the code book. So actually the command is actually the code book, but let us see how the dialog box gives us the result. Now we want to describe data content, and so we leave empty for all the variables, and then we simply click on submit. When we do that, it gives us the command as codebook and gives us the result. Now what happens is that for each of the variable in there, it describes the data content as this particular data is a string variable with no missing values, with unique value 74, that is 74 observations, and it tells you that examples are some of these variables which are contained in the variable make, and then it gives us a warning here that the variable has embedded blanks. That is not a problem. We are only describing the data set. We can click here on more, and it will give us the remaining variables described. And so we can go back in there. We can even type the code book for a specific variable. So for instance, we can type price, which happens to be a variable in here. And so you press enter. Now notice that in the command window, all commands are entered in lowercase letters because data is case sensitive. If it is a text string, a label that you are defining, then you can wrap that one in code, and then you can execute that particular command. So here I press enter, and it only describes the price. I can also write the command as codebook and go to the variables window, and you can see that anytime I hover my mouse on the variables, you see an arrow which is pointing to the results window. So that means that when you type in your command and you click on that arrow, it drags the variable into the command window. So when I click on this arrow, which is beside the mpg, now it drops the variable here as mpg. If I click on the, say, weight, it drops that variable also in here, and length, and I can press enter now to execute the command, which will describe the data contents in the variables. Now we can go to the data, describe data, and go to inspect variables, and the command is inspect. Now this time around, it also tells you to leave empty for all variables, or you can select which variables you want to inspect, and that one will display a simple summary of data's attributes. And so you can simply click on OK, and you realize that it will give you the number of observations, which are actually 74. And at the end of the day, it says that the variable make has no particular values. It has no integers and non-integers, and the missing values are 74. But when we go down and click on more, we can see that actually the price variable, so where is the inspect here? So the price variable is given here. It tells you that there are positive values, which are 74 in number, the number of observations, and then there are 74 integers, but there are no non-integers. And so this also gives you a summary, a brief summary statistics of the variable. And it actually displays hypothetical data which describe the distribution of your data somehow like in a bar chart, but it's only hypothetical. So this is not something that normally like for a graph, but at least it gives you an idea about the data or the variable within the data set. Now, another option is to go to the data, go to the describe data, and you can also list the data. Now, you can leave empty for all the variables, or yet again, we can simply select any of the variables that we want. So we want to list the values of these three variables in there. What happens is that it will list the entire values within the data set. So if I click on submit now, and then let me cancel or close the box, and you realize that for all the number of observation, the 74 observation, to list the entire data. Now I wish to look at the other options in there, such as the by, if, in. Now what this means is that you can type an expression which specifies how many of the values you want to display. So for instance, I may want to display this one in 1 to 10, and this is how it is specified. Let me see whether this will actually work. And it says in not found because we have a problem with which of the by, if, and in that we want to use. And so in that case, what we want to do is that we can simply type in the command window list, and then we want to say the price, the mpg, the rep 78, just like we chose in here. But this time around, this if is what was causing the trouble, and so we can simply type in 1 to 10. And so this is how we type in 1 to 10. And so it means that it's going to list the values of price, mpg, and rep 78 variables from 1 to 10. Press enter, and then you see that this is actually displayed here. Now go to the data again, and then the describe data, go to compactly list variable names. Compactly list variables matching patterns. And so we can also leave it empty for all the variables, or click on this arrow to select which variables we want to display. And so I will just simply click on OK, then it will actually display the variable names. Now the next thing that we're also going to consider is to go to the describe data and then the summary statistics. Now when this happens to you, can also leave empty for all variables, or I can actually choose which variables I want to summarize. I want to summarize these particular variables, and then I just want to make a standard display of it, or display additional statistics, or no display, just calculate the mean. Whichever of these options that you think you want to use, you can use that one for analysis. I want to leave it on standard display. Click on OK, and then actually it summarizes the variables 78, weight, and length as specified in the command. And so when we perform these basic information statistics, you realize that we made use of 5 commands. Now the first one was the describe. The first one was describe. The second one was a code book actually. The third one was inspect. When you press any key on your keyboard, it actually goes more and more. Instead of clicking on this particular button to go down the result. So we use the inspect, we use the DS to display the variable names. Then we also use the last one, which is the summarize, to summarize the variables with the number of observations, the mean, standard deviation, the minimum, that of the maximum. So this is how to perform basic information statistics in data. Now let us call in the auto.dta dataset, and we would like to perform a number of statistics on it. Now, STATA gives you all the options that you need to perform analysis on your data by simply going to the menu bar and clicking on statistics, and you have all these options available to work with your data. So for instance, you may want to use summaries, tables and text, summary and descriptive statistics, and maybe you come to summary statistics. And so when that happens, you can just select any of the variable or leave empty for all the variables. So let's select price, MPG and Rep 78, and then simply click on OK, and then it will summarize this data or information for you. And so that is exactly what we saw when we went to the data, go to the describe data, and simply go down here and select the summary statistics. But this statistics option can do more than just summarize data. In there, you can even display frequency tables if you want, one-way table, two-way table, multiple, a whole lot of tables that are available here. So for instance, if you click on say one-way table, you can select the categorical variable. In that case, I may even go for foreign, for instance, and then a subpopulation which is optional. Just simply click on OK, and then it can tabulate or create a frequency distribution table for this particular variable foreign. You can also go to the statistics, and one thing is that whilst you are making use of the menu options in STATA and the commands are executed or whatever action or operation that STATA performs, it gives you the corresponding command in STATA, and this is the secret to using the STATA software. You don't have to know all the commands you don't have to know the commands off head, or maybe keep all the commands in memory. But as you continue to use the dialog boxes, the menu options that are in STATA, the more familiar you are with the commands. And so subsequently, whenever you are working with STATA, you can simply use the commands, type them in the command window and execute them directly. So for instance, if I want to tabulate the foreign, and I know this particular command, there would have been no need for me to go to the statistics and summaries and go to the frequency table. So I simply have to type in here tabulate and then the variable tabulate foreign, press enter, and then the command is executed. This is how you can work with STATA. So STATA gives you these many options which make it easy for you to work with it. Now you can go to statistics again, and we also have linear models and related. So we can try to run a simple linear regression where a dialog box appears and it asks us to choose a dependent variable, let's say price, an independent variable, so maybe MPG, Rep 78, maybe weight and length, and then simply click on submit, and you realize that the result is actually displayed there when you run this particular regression with the number of observations and information that you need. And we have an ANOVA table, and we have the coefficients which are estimated for each of the variables, the standard error, the t, the p-values which expresses their significance in a 95% confidence interval. You can also suppress the constant term. You click on this button, and in that case the constant values will not be estimated. You can also use the total sum of squares with constant. And then at the end of the day, we have a number of options that you can also use, whether frequency weight, sampling weight, analytic weight, important weight, and these are statistics. And for that matter, you will have to apply what you learned in your statistics class in there and be able to produce what kind of analysis that you need. We also have the standard errors there. We have the default standard errors which actually display there. We may want to display the robust standard errors. We'll use this one for the default, or we can use this particular option which is best for homoscedastic, and this one is also best for homoscedastic. But depending on which of the formulas you are using here, the bias correction, and that depends on how well you know your statistics. You can specify a simple clustered robust or ordinary least squares, a bootstrap and jackknife, and a whole lot of things that are available over the survey data estimation. And you can click on the reporting also, and you realize that the 95% confidence interval is specified, and so you can simply change the confidence interval if you want to. You can also report on standardized beta coefficients, and this is the report coefficient default that we have here, and a whole lot of options that are available for you to work with the STATA program. I can also click on cancel to close the dialog box, go to statistics. We can have a binary outcome. That means you can specify a logit model, logistic regression, reporting odds ratios. We can have probate and a whole number of options that we also have here. And so for instance, we have a variable in there called foreign, and this variable is coded as domestic and foreign, so has binary outcomes. So we can specify that one as a dependent variable because we are using a probate regression. You can choose the independent variable, maybe price, MPG, and rep78. And then at the end of the day, you can simply click on OK to run this particular result. And it gives you the log likelihoods of the results, the number of observation, the chi-square, the log likelihood ratio chi-square, the probability value, which is significant in this case. We have the coefficient estimated, the standard errors, the z-values, and the probability values with their confidence intervals. So you can see that this statistic option has a whole lot of statistical parameters that you can perform on your data in terms of analysis, and you can do so many of these in there. So these are some of the things that you need to just try your hands on. The example data sets are there for you to manipulate and use the various statistical measures or use a software to work with some of these data sets, and they actually are cool. And so this is how you can get to familiarize yourself with STATA. At the end of the day, the core of this tutorial is to actually show you that you do not need to know the commands offhand, but as you begin to work with the dialog boxes and the menu options that are available, STATA generates the commands as well as the results, so that next time as you keep on working with them, you will familiarize yourselves with the commands and you can just type in there directly into the command window. Let us call in the auto.dta datasets to learn how to use the graphics or visualizations in data. And so system use auto.dta, press enter, and the data is called into the STATA program. Now, when you go to the graphics, you see, primarily, if you want to perform any analysis, we simply have to use the statistics and graphics, which are used quite often. And so in the graphics, you can specify a two-way graph, which is a scatter line or what have you. We have a bar chart, dot chart, pie chart, histogram, box plot, contour plot, and a whole lot of options here to plot what kind of graphs that you want to display in data with a given data set. So for instance, let us illustrate how to create a scatter plot. So when I click on the two-way graphs, so this is what I did. I clicked on graphic from the menu bar, go to two-way graph, the scatter line, etc. And now we simply have to click on create. And then we specify whether we want to create a basic plot, a range plot, a contour plot, a fit plot, immediate plot, or advanced plot with the various select type available from this list. So when I click on the advanced plot, you see the time series line, a whole lot of options that we also have here, but we want to plot a basic plot. And so this is a scatter. We specify the y variable, so let us choose this price, and the x variable, so maybe MPG. Then we simply have to accept this and then click on it, and then click on submit or OK. But we know when you click on submit, the dialog box remains, but the result is run behind the scenes there. And you can also click on OK. In that case, it closes the dialog box. The result is also run. So this is how we plot a scatter diagram. So let me just click on submit and realize that the graph will appear on the screen like this. And then we have this particular result, which is a scatter diagram between the price and that of the mileage variables in the data set. I can close this graph now. And then we can also go ahead to specify on the y-axis the title. In that case, that was automatically generated, and we saw that we had the price there. The x-axis too, we can specify the title, and we saw the mileage also there. You can specify the title itself, and perhaps you may want to type a price versus mileage. We can specify a legend, maybe standard legend, or click on this arrow to show a contour legend or contour line legend options. A whole lot of options that we have over here. The overall and the buy, these are some of the things that you just need to be looking at them, be trying your hands on them. So what I really want to do now is to bring out the plot which we defined and show you how to work with the graphs. Now, what we want to do is that when I click on OK, and then the graph appears, STATA provides a very convenient way to edit your graph in so many ways. So you simply go to the two icons that we find there and click on this one, which says Start Graph Editor. When you click on it, it makes this graph editable. So see, these dots which have been plotted as a scatter, you can simply click on it and then you see that they have been selected. You can select the entire graph. You can select the scale, the axis, the labeling of the axis, and a whole lot of options that we also have here. So for instance, this is price, and I can just change. When you click on it, you see at the top here, it gives you several options like changing the color of the text, maybe from black to say yellow, and that is affected over there. You can also change the size from medium, small to huge, and you also have this option. The margin between this and that, and a whole lot of options that we find here. I can just say price of data set. Price of data set. Press enter, and that is also affected in here. I can change it back to black if I want to. And then I can also click on this one to do same. And one thing is I can change the color of the points over here. The symbol specifies the shape, and so this is circles. I can just click on this arrow to bring a drop down, change it to triangle if I want to. You can also change it to small square if you want to. So let me change it back to the circle like this. And then we can also specify the color, whether magenta, and this is the color of the point. We can just make it pink if we want to, and whatever that we can also change the plot type from scatter to line. And this doesn't make any particular meaning, but if you have a particular plot where you want to plot a line plot, you can simply change the type in there if you have a data that follows that particular line plot that you want to specify. You can also change it to connected. That is just to give you an overview of how it looks like when working with a graph editor. You can also plot a bar graph like that, a spike. We can have a drop line. We can have an area. We can have a dot. But we like to change it back to the scatter. So when you click on the main graph like this, select the entire graph, and then we have to specify the title if you want to. So for instance, we can just write price of data set per our axis labels, price of data set versus mileage. Just simply press enter and you realize that the price, the title of the graph is actually displayed here. Aspect ratio, we have a scale, then we have the color of the entire text. So for instance, you can just simply click on this one to change the color, the background, whatever that you can do in here. This is a graph editor. Now you see that on the left hand side, even on the right hand side, we have more, which allows you to do so many things with what you have in there. In the region, the margin, the color is actually red. We can have the outline width and a whole lot of options that we have over here. The inner region, what do you want to do with it? Aspect or size, the titles, and even advanced options that you can also do in there. Let me cancel it right now. And so we have a lot of options. You can even access these particular editable tools that we find on the left hand side here. This one is the select option, and so when you click on this one, it selects it so that it allows you to, because it is red, and when it's selected, the outline is red. That is why it is behaving like that. So let me click on the graph itself and change from red to, let's say, blue. It was bluish, light bluish gray like this. And then I click on this one and we see the red outline. That is why it wasn't showing. So this one allows you to select anything that you want to select in there. And this one also allows you to enter a text. So you see when I hover your mouse on it, it tells you add text. Now you can just position your cursor on the graph and you want to type it anything in there. So maybe you simply click on it, and then the text you can just type scatter plot main area, and then simply click on apply. We can have the box, the format, advanced options, and a whole lot of options, but at the end of the day, we want to just type a text. So we want the size of the text to be very huge. We want the size of the text to be somehow, let's say, medium. The color of the text is currently yellow. We can choose maybe dark navy is okay. The margin, tiny, zero, custom, medium, small, medium, large, and a whole lot of options that we have. So let's choose V small, very small, and then just simply click on apply, and you see that that is displayed on the graph. Click on OK, and that is done. And then you can also click on this one to add a line to it. If you want to visually plot maybe a line of best fit for this cutter, you can just simply draw the line this way, and the line is inserted. And then you can specify the color of the line. So if you change it from black to say yellow, you can simply draw, and then you have the yellow in there. You can change it to whatever color you have. You can change the width to say very, 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 very thick. So you can just draw it and you see how thick the line is. So many things that you can do with it. Okay, so many things. And then we can have arrowhead, which neither, we can just say both. Then we draw, and then we have both arrows in there. You can just say only the tail, then we have the tail in there. You can just say only the head, we have the head in there. Now here you can also add marker. For instance, maybe you can just put a hollow circle in here. As you can see, the same with hollow circle, you can just say maybe hollow diamond, hollow small square, and click anywhere in the cell, and it has that. And I can also choose the size of the shape. So for instance, maybe too large, maybe a very, very huge like that, and then becomes larger. And then here it also allows you to grade edit. When you click on it, you can just edit a grid that we find over here. So many things that you can do with the graph editor. And so this is a graph, a simple graph that we can plot in the graph editor. Let me just close it and I'm not going to save it. If you want to plot any other type of graph, you can simply bar chart. We have dot chart, pie chart, and a whole lot of charts available in here. And one thing is that, like I said, although STATA is command based, you do not have to enter the commands by yourself. You just simply have to use the menu options, the dialog boxes that STATA provides, and then use the information therein to guide you in selecting what variable that you want to use, you want to plot. A whole lot of issues, density, the fraction, frequency here, and I can just simply specify the y-axis a title, the x-axis a title, the titles, and what have you, a whole lot of things. I can just simply click OK, and the graph is also generated. So these are some of the ways that we can work with graphics, and that is just by the way.
So in summary, the STATA software is actually not difficult. You do not need to keep all sorts of commands in memory before working with STATA. Simply use the menu options and dialog boxes as demonstrated in this video, and whilst STATA continues to generate the respective commands, learning these commands will only become a natural process. I wish you all the best in working with STATA. I hope you found this lesson useful. Thank you and have a nice day.